Welcome, everybody, to Stay Curious. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us today as we look at a window of space history, so to speak, as we've got a clever green screen here of a launch through the windows of Kennedy Space Center Launch Control Center there. And thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Mark Marquette. We've been doing this for 5.5 years. We being my buddy Marty Winkle, but we gotta have a Marty Winkle on a stick here, flat Marty, as they called it. If you grew up in the, I guess around 2000, kids were sending flat pictures of themselves. Flat Stanley, it was called. Marty, love you. He's up in great state of New York, taking care of some family business. We have Matthew Raj doing our Streamlabs program today, waving back at you there, Matthew. Thank you so much for all he does. He's become an indispensable employee here at the American Space Museum. And many of you have met Raj, who's about 8'4" in height, and we love that because he can do things up high that I can't do here in the museum, and we need that. So thank you, Raj, for all your dedication. He's one of these people just like me, came in this museum and got hooked on it. And why not? Because we celebrate the birth of America's space age right here in this delivery room, Brevard County. And this is a very important flight that occurred 16 years ago. We're going to look through the window of time here. So bear with us there. I've teased it enough on Facebook if you're a Facebooker. But we want to say hello to Dougie Forrest there in Los Angeles. Doug, I'm waiting for a picture of Enterprise, what it looks like. But I see it's really close to the stadium there in Los Angeles when I watched the USC football game the other day. Tom Usiak, good afternoon. You missed my call. Tommy, I was asking you if it was you and your brother at this launch of called couple different terminology with it we'll get to here in a minute. Dave Stengy's there. Hi, great Tuesday to you. And Steve Jokums, all his friends from Fox Lake, Illinois. Yes, hope we're doing okay and the flooding subsides soon. We had some massive flooding, and I had trouble downloading pictures. I took a Kennedy Space Center today where when I was out there visiting an astronaut, I'll show you here in a minute, the parking lot was flooded. I didn't even dare go the way I usually go to park. I went a different way. So thank you all for watching today. Let's kick it off there. I mean, what did I say? Enterprise? Yep. I do mean Endeavor there. We want to know where Enterprise is, of course, on the aircraft carrier at Hudson Bay in New York. So let's get a few business things out of the way, Raj, as we're having our Space Memorabilia show Saturday, November 8th at Hyatt Place. If you're local, already have enough vendors. Okay, so if you're local, it's the same hotel where we have Shuttle Fest. It's free. Show up and start buying some Christmas gifts or holiday gifts, Hanukkah gifts, Festivus gifts, whatever, for your friends out there. So there's going to be some great vendors there. We have one vendor, Raj, that she will have all Christmas ornaments, space ornaments. So save your money. Also, great Bob Seek is going to do a NASA Legends dinner with us on November 5th, Wednesday, okay, 6 to 9. $40 for a delicious lasagna dinner in the O'Galley district of Melbourne at the Italian American Club. And Bob is just an awesome person, and he's going to tell you all out there with all today's technology, Raj, don't forget to Google your brain. All right, so you'll hear that from Bob Seek. He launched 51 shuttles and was a great architect of the whole shuttle era. And Bob Granath is going to be here tomorrow. This is the plug when he did a Bumper 8 75th anniversary show in August. We had him here in September, and Bob will be here to talk about things that maybe you don't know about in space history. You think you know, but then do you know? So he's going to give us some good anecdotes of some space history tomorrow on Stay Curious. And then Thursday we have Bert Dick going to be here, talk about his goings on with the National Space Society. Our sponsor today is Lake County Spaceport. Yeah, she didn't know there was a spaceport in Lake County. Well, our good friend Steve Yokums has a business where on Fox Lake, which this is on Lake Michigan area up there, north west of the great city of Chicago, and he does decals and other things for your models, particularly your shuttle models. All right, putting the RCC, the reinforced carbon on the wings. That's hard to paint. There's a decal for that. Also decals. Here's his Facebook page, I believe. Your source for space modeling information and specialized detailing products. All right. And these are some of the beautiful models that Steve has done. A great sponsor of all things American Space Museum. Steve, thank you for your support. Here's and the models. There's how you make your shuttle look good on the bottom with the decal set. Not that chintzy one that came with the model. You get a real good one there. So, and Steve is donating a portion of his proceeds of his business every year to the American Space Museum. And that's not a small check either. We're very grateful for that, Steve. But that's our sponsor today, Lake County Spaceport. All right, your decal vendor to make your models look sharp and pretty. There's Marty. Didn't know if I'd find my flat Marty sign there, but there he is. Hope you're watching, buddy. And he remoted in and set things up for Raj, so we appreciate that. Well, today I went out and saw Steve Smith, 4-time shuttle astronaut, 7-time spacewalker. For one goal in mind, I was told he wants to come to Shuttle Fest. And indeed, he said yes. It looks like as long as I don't have anything else booked up, which is what all the astronauts say, because they may have a paid gig, but it's June 19th here at the museum, and then the 20th and 21st at the Hyatt Place. He said he can't wait to come. His best friend's Joe Tanner, so you know they were talking to each other because Joe T had a great time at Shuttle Fest 5, or 4, I mean. And he's also friends with, he taught John Grunsfeld how to spacewalk, he says. So they trained together in that neutral buoyancy tank. A great guy, very tall too, over 6'1". Here's the new poster I have out getting autographed that we'll let you buy on our auction one day. So Steve Smith is in the fold for Shuttle Fest 5, folks, and save the date. June 19th through 21st is the event here at the Cocoa Beach Hilton in Florida. All right, it's going to be high class as we've taken this to the next level. Everybody knows what Hilton means. Everybody knows what Cocoa Beach means, and you can sit at their tiki bar and literally hear the ocean roar 100 feet away on the other side of the berm where they have the plants and stuff to help against the wind and so forth. So yes, NASA at Star City, dun, 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 dun. American astronauts on Russian spaceships. We will have the great Norm Thagard, the first American to fly on a Russian spaceship, will be there on Saturday. Mike Baker, who was a 4 shuttle flyer, twice a pilot, twice a commander. Mike will be there as the director of operations for Russia over 3 years. And we're layering in some non-Russian astronauts like Steve Smith, Nicole Stott, and Don Thomas is committed to us, okay? So we're going to have a lot of book signings and autograph sessions, and we're ready to unleash the hounds on that about middle of November. We'll let y'all know that first week of November, some of the specifics and how you can register and get a room at the Hilton. So Shuttle Fest 5, we are proud that it has become a wonderful fundraiser for our museum. Well, let's get to the story of the day. Is the 16 years ago was the launch of Ares-1X. All right, that's the patch on the right. And Ares-1X was let me take that label off there, Raj. Would you mind moving that over to my friend a little bit there? Let's get into what this was all about. Ares X1 was the first stage prototype and design concept demonstrator of Ares 1, a launch system for human spaceflight developed by NASA. All right. The successful launch October 28, 2009 cost $445 million. And it was the final launch from LC-39B until Artemis 1 13 years later. Excellent, Raj. You've got the Ares Orion, you got the Ares patch, and then you've got the Orion patch. This was the EFT-1, was the experimental flight one for the first Orion rated for space off the assembly line, okay? And then the Ares program was part of the Constellation program. I didn't pull off a Constellation logo there. The Constellation program was our return to the moon no later than 2020 with a crewed flight to the planet Mars as the ultimate goal. This was our space program from 2005 to 2009. That was under President George Bush and Space Senator, NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe. All right. And so this was our going back to the moon. The Ares X-1 was going to launch the Orion cruise ship. The Ares 5 was the heavy launch vehicle on there. And let's just, before we talk about how the rails came off of all that, let me see if I got any questions there. All right, everybody's having a good time today. There's our buddy Cliff Watson. And of course, Steve, thank you. He's grateful, but we want a sponsor of our show every day, and we've got 6 or 7 of them. We're rotating out, and nobody more deserved than Steve Jokums. And hope that you meet him, like many of you have, at our Shuttle Fest in June. Okay, let's look at what this flight was all about. All right, here is, I was just today, out there today, flight flown, official flight flown, okay? This is in the Gateway building of Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. No fanfare. It's actually pretty dark where this is located. When they had it in the IMAX building, I thought it was much better displayed, and you were closer to it. But this flew 16 years ago, and as I was taking a few pictures, a couple people came by, and I said, hey, this went to space 16 years ago. See, it says flight flown. And they're like, oh, really? Well, where's it now? Well, 16 years later, we're fixing to fly it crewed for the first time. And this lady said, really? It took that long? I said, yes, ma'am, it did. Okay. Now, 16 years waiting for the launch of Artemis 2 to crew the first Orion, hopefully in mid-February. Let's see. 16 years to wait for that. Let's see, John F. Kennedy's speech was in 1961 in May to Congress. Then we landed on the moon in 1969 in July. My gosh, that's like a little over 8 years in between having nothing but a dream to fulfilling that dream. And we've waited twice as long to even put a human being inside this and orbit the Earth, for gosh sakes. And we're not even going to orbit the Earth and with anybody. We're just going to send them on a big loop around the moon, 6,000 miles away. I need to look that up on the map. I think Vietnam's probably about 6,000 miles away from us here. Or maybe, I was going to look up, what's 6,000 miles away from Titusville? Paris is probably, I'm going to guess 4,000, but I'm just guessing, folks, with our country being 2,000 miles across. And I'm not making any kind of comments that are from the museum. These are my own personal comments, my own observation. Took us 8 years to go from Kennedy wanting us to go to the moon to getting there. And 16 years later, this spaceship has not even flown crewed. Well, Tommy, I was calling you up to ask you if you and your brother Mark Usiak took these beautiful pictures. Am I ripping them off as some other photographer? Okay, here's the rollout to Pad 39A. It was a single stick rocket, the Ares, a solid rocket, just like the boosters on the shuttle. In fact, this was designed to replace the shuttle as a quick access to space. Okay, and we're talking about the ETF-1 flight aboard a Delta Heavy. Yes, it did, Steve, and I got mixed up on that. That's the one that had in there. When was the date on that? Still, my points are well taken, though I have my spacecraft juxtaposed a little bit. Okay, the EFT-1 boilerplate was flown on a Delta Heavy, all right, and but this spacecraft on here was all about the rocket and testing the ability to do that. Beautiful shot with photographers in the foreground of a twilight roll out there. Okay, and I'm just seeing what other mistakes I may have made here. I'm good. I'm good there. So there's Mark out in the field with his brother Tom, and they're not commenting. I know they took pictures out there because this was part of their some of their body that I have there. So there is the Ares X1 on the pad. Look at that. They hadn't even taken down the service structure of the shuttle yet in 2009. Of course, because they were using it. Well, they hadn't used it anymore. They shut all the rest of the shuttles were launched off 39A. Okay, but really an effective rocket. Constellation. Here's some of the mass simulate. They simulated mass. Okay, for ballast. The forward skirts there were part of recovering the boosters, the 4 segments there, much like the 4 segments of a solid rocket booster on the shuttle there. And there's, I think that's Mark on the left there, getting a beautiful shot. Give you an idea of what the photographers do, and as it goes away there. And Mark covered the Ares X1 launch. Thank you, Tom. And that's him there. So glad that he's there. This demonstrated control of dynamically similar vehicle using control algorithms similar to those that be used on Ares X1. And also the assembly of this at Kennedy Space Center. All of the initial things to put this together at this magnitude is what this first flight was all about. And then it got quickly canceled. $445 million. All right, $250 million. There's Mark's beautiful launch. You ain't going to turn those engines off once you start them. And there's another shot. Pad 39B. All right. And the aerodynamic G-forces there as it goes through MarQ, where you get that aerodynamic atmospheric. Gorgeous shot there for sure. 16 years ago is when we did this, all right? And there's a beautiful blue sky in space there. I don't think we've got the Ares patches in here. Pretty sure we don't. So I'm not going to look there. So that's what was going on 16 years ago, was testing the rocket that was going to send us back to the moon with a crew that was going to go to the moon. Then the Ares X5 with some strap-on boosters and stuff was going to do the job there. Called Constellation. In Ares, of course, the program reflected the Earth, the moon, and finally Mars. Ares was the Greek equivalent of Mars in Rome, the Roman term for that. And the goal was really to think about Mars, okay? And this was not the date for the EFT landing there, but here's the beautiful window that we looked at there. But there was the landing of the EFT that's out there at Kennedy Space Center right now, giving us a Halloween look, if you will, okay, on Halloween week here. And there, let's look at Nick Thomas and Wendy out there at the Artemis 1 launch pad there. Wendy, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out. Wendy, not, what's that astronaut's name there? Wendy, somebody help me. Having a senior moment there. Seen her 5 or 6 times. Too Short's her nickname. Wendy Lawrence. All right, her dad was a Mercury astronaut, almost made it there. Wendy Lawrence. The Constellation was in response to George Bush and Sean O'Keefe administrators' vision for space exploration. Then we had a change in leadership in the White House, and then we had Michael Griffin ordered a complete review as successor to O'Keefe as NASA administrator. Mike Griffin, very smart gentleman, people have told me. They directed NASA to develop a sustained human presence on the moon, including a robust precursor program to promote exploration, science, commerce, and U.S. preeminence in space as a stepping stone to Mars and other destinations. So work began on the revised Constellation program in 2005 to send astronauts first to the International Space Station, then to the moon. And this was the final, the Ares launch was the only thing that happened of concrete on there, except for the test of the Orion spacecraft on the Delta Heavy there. Then another change in presidents, and Barack Obama in 2010 proposed to cancel the program. He then revised administration statements saying that Constellation contracts remain in place until Congress overturned the previous mandate. And that segued into 2011, the new Space Launch System. All right, this has been in existence for a good 14 years. And President Obama, in a wise move, privatized the Space Coast launch pads. It's just incredible how space companies have gobbled up those classic rocket row that was protecting our nation from its adversaries. So, and now we have a peaceful coexistence at Rocket Row with a dozen startup companies that want to do great things for America and humanity. There's MarQ Usiak's launch of Artemis 1. We'll be celebrating that 3 years coming up November 22nd, I think was the date on that, but mid-November. 3 years ago was the first Artemis launch. It was a little after midnight. A lot of fun. Watch that with Bill Whiting and company up there. And of course, it orbited the moon uncrewed. Didn't orbit. It had been passed by. It actually passed by closer than Artemis 2 is. That's a picture off the GoPro there on there. So there's a little bit of history of X1, Ares X1 launched today to replace the Space Shuttle launch system. It was the Ares 1 booster to launch humans. Ares 5 was going to launch the Orion, was going to launch the Altair lunar lander. We may talk about that later. Altair, the lunar lander. Wish that had come into fruition. But it didn't. So there you have it. Today, space history. 16 years ago, the booster that was going to take humans back to the moon by putting them in Earth orbit, Ares X1, tested for the one and done time one there. Well, to end our program here, show you a little bit of space memorabilia in our museum. There is the crawler, okay, a replica of the crawler in our space shuttle gallery there. And I got an email from Tom Usiak in Pennsylvania, and he said that when I was on Stay Curious a while back, Michael Bruno asked a question about the crawler transporter, and was I ever inside of it? All right. And that is the cab right there being shown. And I told him I was in the driver's cab, and here are the photos of the cabin controls like they were in 1972. All right. I tried to mimic your shot there, Tommy, a little bit. And this is one on one end and one on the other, because it just went back and forth. They never did a U-turn with it, or a 180 to turn it around. So if you're going in the other direction, see, we got a windshield wiper there. That looks good. And here's the controls in 1972. Okay. Pretty basic. It crawled at 1/2 mile an hour. Well, we've got some controls too, Tommy. That's pretty cool. Michael Bruno, there you go. In answer to your question. in pictures from our good friend Tom Usiak. Today, all these displays are digital screens, okay? And thanks for sending that, Tom. Well, here's our controls we have here, donated by Don Buchanan, okay? And I should have reached this up here. I can't read what that says. Can you read what that says on the gold plaque? Anyway, they had a forward, a backward, and there's a little button there like a joystick that we have activated. It had a little beeper on it there. And I can't read what that says. I'm sorry I didn't pull that off, but that's our artifact of the day there today. It talks about, it's a retirement gift to Mr. Buchanan, who is an operator, and they mounted this on a plaque. So this was obviously one from like 1968 or 66, because I don't see that exactly in here anywhere. And Tom says this is the 1972 version of it right there. So there's our beautiful crawler replica on display. We actually have a third of a tile. They wanted to give us a whole tread, I think, but no way. Wherever we set it, we'd never be able to move it. They weigh, I think, 2,000 pounds each tread. So I've been waiting for the table. We have that 1/4 of a tread on to collapse. It's so heavy. But anyway, hope you enjoyed today's show. There is our crawler control system there. Or there, I did do it. In retirement, you may always keep a firm grip and strong handle on those fond memories when you're propelled and steered large objects at KSC from the Crawler Transporter Modification Team. This was June 1991. So he indeed had taken the first shuttle to the pad. All right. The second one was launched in November. So Don Buchanan, don't know too much about him, but aren't you interested to stay curious and find out? So I will. So thank you very much. Yes, that is a large diorama we have there, built for the Nixon administration in 1970 to show them what they were talking about in 1972 when Congress passed it. The shuttle's on the back there. And the shuttle, by the way, passed by one vote of Congress. One slim vote. Don't know who cast that. You could research that, you politicos out there. So thank you all for watching today. Remember, we've got a Space Memorabilia show a week from Saturday. Thank you all for your support of our auction. It was very successful. Thank you to Doug Forrest and Manspace Mitch Rothman, Cliffy Watson. Hope you're feeling good down in Pomona, Australia. Tom Usiak, Dave Stange, Steve Jokums, Dean Babcock, and Tom Celentano watching today's show. Maybe Marty's watching it from New York. And we want to remind you, we still have tickets for Bob Seek's dinner, $40 a person. And that's a fundraiser for the American Space Museum. Bob Granath will be here tomorrow. And we thank Steve Jokums and his Lake County Spaceport for all your sponsorship. Go to his website or Facebook page and get you some expert decals for your models and other detailing supplies. So that's it. Thank you, Raj, for a great Streamlabs production today, buddy. We're going to come back and do it tomorrow with a great program with a good friend of the museum, somebody who's become very popular with the way he presents space history, and that's Mr. Bob Granath. So until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying, I can't wait to see you in our museum or see you tomorrow to bridge the space between us.